Well, hello again and welcome. Great to have you all here with us again for another edition of CCTU, the Clean Commercial Transportation Update for this August 7th. Another month has begun. I'm Bill Van Amberg along with my colleague Alicia Gildy. We're happy to be here with you today. We're your hosts. Bonnie Trowbridge, as always, is at the webcast controls, and Casey Okazaki, along with Whitley Porter, are monitoring questions and chat. And we have tried to set aside some time to get some attendee questions in today. So please, if you have some, use that question pane. Alicia, you rushed back from vacation. In fact, you're still out there on the road. Thank you for joining us remotely today.
Oh, pleasure. I couldn't miss it.
Well, it's great to have you here. And on our rundown this week, besides our regular news review, we have a really timely focus for the webcast this week.
We sure do. I am absolutely thrilled, as this is one of my favorite topics in the transportation sector, focusing on maritime and with a special panel lineup, really focusing on advancing clean vessel technologies in the maritime industry. We will have our very own program manager, Kristian Jokinen, who will introduce three great presenters who are going to share with us the great progress they're making in advancing to reduce emissions from the maritime industry by advancing clean technologies. Then we'll be talking with our program manager, Nikki O'Cook, who runs the Clean Off-Road Equipment Voucher Incentive Program. We have a really important update there. We want to make sure that we're getting the latest news on that program out to everyone.
Yeah, that's been quite a breakthrough. But the breakthrough, you're right, on maritime has been so exciting. Let's hear what the audience has to say. I think we got a poll on this morning.
Absolutely. Let's see that poll. And I know that Bill will be reviewing a few really cool technology highlights during his industry news, but first want to hear from all of you. Where do you see technology advancing first with marine vessels? So are we thinking about autonomous electric cargo vessels? How about hydrogen fuel cell ferries? Battery electric tug and push boats? How about emission reduction exhaust systems like the bonnet system? And then lastly, maybe we'll see a wide-scale use of shore power at ports. What do you think will be the first technology where we'll see real emission reductions from the maritime industry with advanced technologies?
You know, we're already seeing so many zero-emission ferries and even now moving into some cargo equipment in Europe and the Nordic countries. So that's interesting. But now some of the first fuel cell systems are coming for a bit longer range or longer runtime.
It's absolutely impressive. I love to see where technology is going here. All right, Bonnie, what do we see? All right, well, okay. 33% are saying wide-scale use of shore power at ports, followed by the use of hydrogen fuel cell ferries. I would say after that, battery electric tug and push boats. All right, great participation. Thank you, everyone. All right, Bill, over to you for industry news.
Great, and let's move into that. First up is Core on the wait list. And Bonnie, if we could just adjust the slideshow, it's actually showing in preview mode right now. If you could put it full screen, that'd be great. We mentioned to you that our core program, the Clean Off-Road Equipment Program, is actually gone into a position where it's used up all of its incentive dollars. This happened in just a few short months. So we'll get an update on that, as we mentioned, from our program manager, Nikki O'Cook. But we actually now have a wait list on the Clean Off-Road Incentive Funding Program that we manage for the California Air Resources Board. Boy, the trend on e-commerce continues to grow, and I think there's some big announcements that came just this past week from UPS. Talked about their shipping and home deliveries boosted by 65% just in the last quarter. This has been phenomenal growth, and it's really been driven by the fact that people are ordering more and more of their goods to their home. It's changed the whole distribution pattern, not just in the vehicles delivering to the home, but also in the trucks that are taking these goods from warehouses out to distribution centers. We've seen also continued progress announced this past week from Freightliner, part of the Daimler Group. They've gotten now more than 300,000 miles of electric driving under their belts as they put out their eCascadia and their EM2 platforms. This is really interesting as they're doing customer trials. They're aiming towards 1 million miles, and they've talked about the production timeline for these vehicles being 2022. Amazon also stays active. We've talked about their Aurora group, but this is a new acquisition for them called Zoox, which is dealing with autonomous ride-hailing services But a lot of people who are looking at this Amazon acquisition are also saying this could be just as easily used in last mile delivery and automating that whole segment. So clear where their investments are going and where they see some of the trends. We are seeing, as we mentioned, a lot of trends around electrification in maritime, but also now automation too. There's development work going on with autonomous electric cargo barges that would operate in the Netherlands and Belgium out of the port of Rotterdam. This is actually pretty exciting. They're talking about these carrying a number of cargo containers and being able to recharge these at regular intervals going up the rivers and canals. We're also seeing the same thing going on in Norway, an autonomous electric cargo vessel. 2 of them have been put on order and build to operate across the fjord from Oslo in Norway. Really quite exciting what people are starting to look at, because maritime transport is actually one of the most fuel efficient and least costly ways to move cargo. Now, if you can do it with electrification, you're also greatly reducing both cost on the fuel, but also the emissions that come out of it. And, you know, this is also going into passenger transport. Copenhagen has just taken delivery of 5 electric ferry boats they'll be using to run customers as part of their full transport system. Really exciting move for Movia, which is their transport system in Copenhagen. And they're just connecting it into the subway, bus, and extensive bike system that they have there. So a lot of activity on this, and this is really what is showcasing what we hope to profile for you today, the huge breakthroughs in electrified maritime activities. Alicia.
Yes, well, great lineup there, Bill, and exciting to see these technologies come forward. And today, with a special lineup brought by our very own Kristian Jokinen. CALSTART, as you know, our mission is looking at ways in which we can help advance and accelerate the adoption of vehicle technologies. And we really wanted to evaluate where might we play an important role at CALSTART to help advance clean vessel technologies, and in particular, taking a close look at hovercraft. Well, Kristian has taken a good look at this and explored some opportunities, as well as made some good friends along the way, and he brought together today a panel that's going to share some really important insights on where this industry is going. All right, so Kristian, great to have you, and looking forward to an update on your white paper that you've been working with, and really look forward to your interview today.
Thank you, Alicia. It's great to be here today, and it's a very exciting time indeed in the maritime industry. And we here at CALSTART have been following this space for quite some time now. It's great to see that some of these technologies that have been so effective in cutting the pollution in the heavy-duty vehicle space, for example, is now finding their way into the marine applications as well. It's basically the same technology concepts that are needed, just with larger electric motors and energy storage devices. I have a great panel with me here today. I have Daniel Yuska from U.S. Maritime Administration, as well as David Lee from ABB's Marine and Ports Group, and Peter Brooks from the Marine and Port Solutions Group at BAE Systems. And I have some questions for the panelists, but before I get to those questions, I would like to give you a quick overview of the maritime industry and the current trends that we are seeing. The marine sector in itself is a very large source of air pollution. Actually, the International Maritime Organization, IMO, has estimated that the greenhouse gases will grow between 50 up to 250% by the year 2050 if nothing is done, and this would be from international shipping alone. It's also a very local issue with the pollution. Here in the South Coast, for example, the South Coast Air Quality Management District has estimated that the ships and commercial boats category as a category will be the only category that will see an increase in NOx emissions by the year 23. This is because other categories such as heavy-duty vehicles will have solutions to cut those NOx emissions, so it's very much a local issue as well. And there is current regulations going into the sulfur content for the fuels going to ships, but much more still has to be done in order to have a big impact on the emissions. however, looking at the innovations currently taking place, it's encouraging to see that there are more and more boats with some type of batteries operating. So there is currently over 250 ships with some type of battery, whether it being a hybrid configuration or fully electric application, or an even hydrogen fuel cell ships with fuel cells in them. And here we are looking especially at Europe, Scandinavia, and Norway, that has been very successful in demonstrating these vessels that operate on the fjords and where these sort of battery electric solutions make good sense and fit the duty cycle. But given this situation, I would like to go back to the panel and with the first question, and we hopefully have time also for questions from the audience. But looking basically at the US situation, my question to the panelists is that what can be done here in the US to accelerate the number of deployments and what type of consortiums can be formed? And I would like to start with you, Dan, if you can give us Marad's perspective and what you see on the federal side, and then if you can go to David and Peter for your input from the technology integration side.
Sure. Well, thank you, Kristian. And thank you for actually having me on this panel. Personally, I think it would be a little more helpful to have more incentives that are really specific to the maritime sector. We've seen for landside transportation over the past 30-some years, there's been a lot of incentives, whether it's hybrids, whatever else. That doesn't really exist for the shipping sector. I feel that those incentives need to reach not just the larger businesses, but some of the tinier ones too. So they can often be shut out of kind of a grant process just at certain times. The META program, the Maritime Environmental and Technical Assistance Program, that's a program that I currently am in charge of. We've encouraged a lot of centers of excellence, or well, the consortia, for many, many years now. Some of the most successful projects that we have had a list of extensive partners. And so those partners have included the industry, the technology vendors, but they have also included local government, state government agencies, academia, nonprofits, policymakers. And then really one of the most important things too, and when you're talking with ships and ship transportation, it's really good to also include some of the trade academies. So whether it's one of the state maritime academies, whether it's a junior college, because those are the people that will be operating those kinds of ships, boats. And so they need to be involved in that whole process too. And with that, I'll turn it over to David, I guess.
Yeah, so yeah. Thanks, Dan. I appreciate it. Kristian, thanks for the question. So it's always a good one. And I always say this is kind of a chicken or the egg kind of question at the same time, because everybody's looking for lower cost to adopt new technologies, but you get there through volume, right? And you typically don't have that volume at the beginning. So I agree completely with Dan on the funding side. There's, especially because if you start talking about harbor craft, these are typically either commercial or they're municipality owned, and cost is really important in these vessels, and especially the upfront cost. So yeah, Dan, to your point, more funding, because there has been some funding released here in the U.S., but it has been small amounts, and it really kind of limits what type of vessel or any even system that could be installed on the vessels. So that's first, and then just again, economy of scale. We got to get some more adopters into the system after that funding, so we can start seeing some of this technology cost come down. And then a big one also is getting, and this is a funny word, but marinizing equipment quicker. That's a big one, because I mean, even if you just look at what's going on in cars and trucks today, one of the examples I always like to use is solid state batteries. So the outlook for on-road transportation is next few years they'll be available for trucks and cars. Well, the outlook for the marine industry is not until next decade. And that's huge on some of these vessels, especially if you're looking at ferries where ridership is all about weight and how many people you can put in. And some of these batteries today are large and very, very high on weight. So, so with any of those, you know, it's, again, kind of which one comes first. I think the funding goes a long way to lend itself to that. So with that, Peter, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Kristian, for the questions. Certainly from a BAE Systems point of view, certainly funding has been key. If we look at how BAE Systems has worked to dominate the North American market for bus, it's state-led funding that has helped accelerate that. So the same sort of focus on the marine sector would go a long way to bringing that technology through. And then, as Dave says, it's taking this proven technology into the marine sector is key, and that's where BAE Systems has been leading. So we've brought through 25 years of our technology now onto some California vessels, the anhydra and the water go round, the fuel cell ferry in particular. And we're starting to make impact. But yes, more vessels definitely helps accelerate, but funding goes a long way. The other item then would be support of technology leading companies. So Switch Maritime recently bought the Golden Gate zero emissions vessel, the water go round, to be the first hydrogen fuel cell passenger ferry in North America. So support of companies like that to help accelerate the technology adoption certainly go a long way. So appreciate the question. Thank you.
Great, thank you, very interesting. And my second question is when it comes to the operational profiles and applications, what do you see as being ideal here in the US, and what is the near-term growth that you see in this space? And we could start with Dan again and then go to Peter and David.
Okay, well, let me look into my crystal ball here now. I guess it depends on the vessel and the regional types of concerns. So for example, at this point in time, if you're looking to put a fuel cell on a large ocean-going vessel for the main propulsion, it's not as practical as using really kind of a workboat or something like that. There's a lot of costs associated. You don't have a fuel cell big enough for that kind of ship. The size of the tanks are huge. And then it's just kind of leaning towards hovercraft, workboats, regional and coastal vessels. They offer more bang for the buck right now, I think, as far as with the overall cost. And I've been seeing a lot more of the interest in those type of ships. I've seen a lot of interest in hybrids, battery, electric, where a lot of the routes are shorter and they can recharge at point A and point B. So that's a really good application there. And then I think I also have to actually point out is that there's not one to get to zero emissions or partial zero. I don't see any one kind of technology that will be applicable to really all of the vessels out there. So it'll be a suite of different kinds of technologies. For example, we recently worked with, it was a cargo ferry, and they were using LNG for the main propulsion. And then they had a pretty big battery bank where they could run on kind of a hybrid system for a very short distance. So it's a combination of things. And then I think Bill had talked about this a little bit earlier. Autonomous type of systems. There's a lot of talk about that. There's a lot of talk for ships currently. And that could be a really good tool to include in a suite of other things that could possibly reduce the overall emission profile. We're currently engaged in a project that will be taking a look at the emission profile using a full autonomy system versus having just a regular captain actually operating the ship. So, so with that, that's kind of a high level. I'll turn it over to David.
I'll let Peter go first on this one. How about that, Peter? Then we'll follow up.
Hey, no, thank you. No, appreciate it. Alicia, I had a slide. If you're able to throw that up, it would be relevant. Yeah, no, thank you. Appreciate that. So, so which applications first? So cost of ownership is certainly king. Operators want to know that that upfront investment will be recouped within a reasonable time period. So any application that's repeatable becomes very easy to scale and understand what that payback period is. So on one of Kristian's slides, he showed various marine applications. By far, passenger car ferries dominate. It's an A to B type cycle, very easy to plan for and cost for. So they stand out. And then we talked a little bit about, you know, how to take that first step into marine. So visionaries like Tom Escher and Joe Burgard of Red and White Fleet did that with Hydra. There was no economic push to go and make that step. It was purely emotional. It was on emissions. They wanted to go on the journey. So they invested in a Hydra vessel, and their vision was, look, get in with a lower emissions vessel. So they went in with hybrid, understanding that over time they can scale the energy storage to become battery dominant hybrid, eventually go full battery electric if they want to, or work with a technology provider that could help switch them over to hydrogen at a later stage if that was the preferred path forward for zero emissions, and which they did in working with BAE Systems. Similar to Switch Maritime buying the Golden Gate Zero Emissions Marine, they have that targeted for a route in San Francisco. It's a repeatable route, and they're able to step in and understand the cost of hydrogen and what the impact of the vessel operation will be for a good cost of ownership model. And then as the vessel types we talked around accelerating into the marine market, then the technology becomes more widespread and more readily adopted because you've got more in use cases now. So back to you, Dave. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. And yeah, I completely agree. I mean, number one is ferries. All right. I mean, that's they have a fixed profile. It doesn't change whatsoever. And as you see with the Washington State Ferry program that we just signed up, that each ferry there is going to be about 9 megawatts of battery, but it's not going to change. So they have a fixed amount of energy that they consume each time. Conversely, we have our hydrogen fuel cell towboat in France. It has a shuttle that runs back and forth. So it just really depends on the deployment and to Peter's point, what type of profile you can fit it in, and back to Dan's point, all the different technologies that we can fit into that. So, but first of all, it's ferries by far.
Great, thank you so much for that insight. I think we have a couple of questions from the audience.
Yeah, I think, Kristian, we do. Casey, would you mind sharing a couple of the audience questions, maybe starting with that one on infrastructure?
Yes, so we do have a question. It was about infrastructure and how if we build renewable large-scale infrastructure, then the vessels will come. So just thoughts on that and yeah.
And great impacts of doing that.
That's right. And if you don't mind, so with that, that's one of kind of the side points everybody think about when they think about zero emission vessels, because they're thinking about what's on the water, not what's on the shore. So we've ran into several projects when you bring a large vessel in and you want to plug it in, that there's not enough power for that short amount of time. So we've looked at several different projects where we have to start installing shoreside batteries. They can actually charge while the vessel's in operation, and when it comes back in, it can get that quick charge. At the same time, I've got to say that, you know, there's some states that, you know, we're just not building power plants anymore. The Northeast is actually looking at tying in the offshore wind into the infrastructure, which really helps support some of these zero emission vessels in those systems. So it's very, very important because it depends on the area and how much is there. You're right. If the infrastructure is already there, it's much easier to deploy one of these vessels.
So if that's on that answer, just one other real quick question that came from the audience. The difference between Europe and the US on maritime, why are they moving faster than the US?
I can take this with no way. Dan, right to your point.
Okay, well,
You got it, Dan.
It's funding, right?
well, yeah, there's not a lot of maritime specific funds available. You do have a lot of federal agencies such as DOE, ARPA-E, the Maritime Administration, that is looking at various technologies and trying to get actual demonstration projects. You know, there's a lot of factors to it. I don't have one really single answer. I don't know if Peter has anything to actually add to that.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is just remember that they're ahead of us in the curve. Not ahead in technology or capability, but just ahead on the adoption curve. So we have probably less than 20 vessels in the US right now. You go to Europe and it must be close to 100 type low or zero emission type vessels. They're just ahead of us. It seems like they're accelerating, but we're catching fast. The one good thing is that we can learn from the European mistakes, so we don't repeat them. But you know, trust me, US is more than capable of reaching European type levels. As we say, look, if the funding's a bit more targeted and technology spreads, it'll come through a lot more faster. So I wouldn't panic. We're more than capable. It's just the opportunity.
Yeah, and let me add just one more thing there, and it's something people always forget about too, is regulation, right? Zero emission port. It's all over the place in Europe, and that's not really been a big push in the US so far.
Great, but thank you so much, Dan, David, and Peter, for your insight today. And on behalf of CALSTART, it would be great to have you on board, and we look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you.
Great
Appreciate
panel.
it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, great job, Kristian. Great job. Gentlemen, what a pleasure and honor to have you with us today. And thank you. What a great segment and what an inspirational topic. Really looking forward to progress and hearing more about these great projects and how we can support them. Bill, I know we have an important speaker up next, so I'm going to toss it over to you.
All right, thanks, Alicia. And boy, we really heard the question and answer around incentives. Need more in the maritime space. Boy, we need more in the off-road sector in general. We have a real growth of demand in this space. We operate the Clean Off-Road Equipment Program for the state of California, CORE, and our program manager, Nikki O'Cook, is joining us now to share. Boy, we're sold out and we've got a wait list. Nikki, what is going on right now?
Yes, so we kicked off the Clean Off-Road Voucher Incentive Project at the beginning of this year, and already now in August, the program has become completely oversold and oversubscribed by $47 million. So we started with $44 million, and now we are negative $47 million, so a combined total of around $90 million in demand for the zero-emission off-road equipment segment. I do have a slide about it if you'd like to put it up there. It'll show you what was requested. So large part terminal trucks, but we also funded a variety of other technologies, including mobile power units, transportation refrigeration units, so those would be on-trailer reefers, quite a bit of heavy-duty forklifts, and rail car movers. We also had categories like shore power and container handling equipment. However, we didn't have any requests in those sectors. So it was a great learning opportunity for us about what's available and what's in demand.
So real quick, Nikki, on the contingency list, what happens now? You're going to pay out the vouchers that we have secured, but what happens with the standby list?
Right, so because it's a first come first serve program, only about half of what I showed you on that pie chart is going to end up getting funded, but some things will be canceled. Sometimes there's purchasers who can't complete their orders, and so once some vouchers are canceled, others will be funded on the list. However, regarding getting programs like this refunded in California next year, we really do encourage stakeholders across the board to pay attention to and participate in the ARB hearings regarding their heavy duty investment planning for next year. And I believe there's a meeting later this month, which you can find on the CARB website.
Yeah, really getting people's voices out there to make the case that more of this is really useful.
Great, Nikki, thank you so much. What a great way to wrap up our program. I know we have one poll, and I think it speaks well to all the great work that you've been doing with the CORE program. So let's go ahead and bring up that poll, Bonnie, and we'll wrap things up here. So where should we prioritize advanced freight technologies to reduce impact on local communities? So we've been talking about the maritime sector today, but also with our Clean Off-Road Equipment program, there's various technologies and opportunities to reduce emissions. So first, how about shore power for ocean-going vessels that are hoteling at ports? How about zero-emission cargo handling equipment, zero-emission harbor craft, zero emission rail switchers, and lastly, zero emission trucks. And we certainly have been talking about that quite a bit. So what say you, my friends? What do you think we need to be doing to prioritize emission reductions around ports and freight?
No, we need all of the above.
We do need all of the above. Well, it looks like one of our very popular topics is looking at how we can really advance zero emission technologies with trucks, followed by shore power with ocean going vessels and ports. And then I think after that, zero emission cargo handling equipment. Well, very good. Thank you everyone for your participation.
Yeah, that's really important because I think what's really exciting about this, particularly in the electrification space, there's so much technology transfer now between these, between on and off road and even into maritime and rail. So really exciting time to make this work. All right, well, once again, here it's happened. We've run out of time again on our half-hour CCTU. We like to keep it tight so that you have a lot to do in your lives, but we try to give you this slice every week of what's new and trending in the industry. And thank you so much for joining us. Remember, the program will be posted, the recording of it, by next Monday on our website. So please go there if you'd like to review or if you missed some segments, and let your friends know about it. Please tweet CalSTART Update and let people know that you find spending Fridays with us worth your time. Next week, we're going to take a look at the High Efficiency Truck Users Forum, HTUF, really now celebrating not only 20 years of its anniversary, but really starting to delve more deeply into the military electrifying its platforms, but also looking at that connection between commercial needs and military needs. So that's next week, plus all the latest updates, news, tools, and tips. So for now, though, that's all we've got. For Alicia Gildy and our entire Clean Commercial Transportation team, I'm Bill Van Amberg. Thanks again so much for joining us. But be safe and stay healthy out there. These are dangerous times. Do what you need to do to protect yourself and to protect others. And remember, stay more connected than ever. We like to say, make Fridays your CCTU day, and hope that you do next week. We'll be right here waiting for you when you do. Until then, have a great weekend. See you next week.